Greetings and welcome to another episode of Sonic Odyssey, the video channel dedicated to bringing you the last 5 decades or so of music in review and discussion format. Before we begin, get the housekeeping out of the way. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the video channel so you can stay up to date with all things Sonic Odyssey. And also please consider giving my Patreon page a visit. The Patreon page is got a link in the show description below, and you can donate anything from a couple of dollars a month upwards. You can have your name listed in the end credits, and also have me review an album of your choosing. So please take a look over there and see if there's something that strikes your fancy. Today we're going to be looking at a Canadian band, the Canadian giants of progressive rock. I speak, of course, of Rush. And the chosen album is Vapor Trails from 2002. But I'm going to be looking at, for the audio samples and for the primary discussion, Vapor Trails Remixed, which was released in 2013, and it was remixed by David Bittrell. Vapor Trails was the 17th studio album released by Rush and was originally not something the band that were particularly pleased with the final product of. Both bassist Geddy Lee and guitarist Alex Lifeson were pretty heavy-handed in the mixing of the album and the mastering of the production. And basically, this 2002 comeback recording had a loud kind of quality to it. I call this album, Vapor Trails, a comeback album for Rush because the years of 1997 and 1998 had not been very kind to drummer Neil Peart. Rush's drummer and lyricist had undergone some serious family loss during a very short period of time within the years 1997 and 1998. So the band went on hiatus for about 5 years, and it was the longest time that the band had ever taken off from recording or doing anything together. During this time, Neil went on a 55-kilometer motorcycle tour of North America, later chronicled in the book Ghost Rider. His experience is what fuels the lyrics and the overall feeling of Vapor Trails. The album is an album of rediscovery and rebirth, facing fear, facing pain, and trying to deal with it all while coming out even stronger. David Bittrell, the man who did the remixing of Vapor Trails into Vapor Trails Remixed, did a phenomenal job. He came in 2011, I think it was, and was asked to take care of the remixing of the album. The opening track, One Little Victory, starts the album with kind of a machine gun type drum intro that gets immediately, it hits you in the gut and lets you know that you're in for something pretty heavy. It's the arrival and revival of the force that is Rush. The multi-track nature of the recording of the original Vapor Trails was such that it's a blessing and a curse at the same time for both the band and critics alike. They were both equally overall none too pleased with the loud quality of the sound. And this is not something that was only a failing on this Rush album. A lot of albums that came out in the 2002 area had this same problem. It had to do with the volume levels, and transferring to CD, the mixing ended up sounding kind of muddied, kind of everything thrust forward in the sound mix. So even with that particular problem facing the original release of Vapor Trails, it was still pretty successful commercially, earning a good chart position, and 2 singles were released from it. Jump ahead 11 years and you have David Bottrill remixing the album for a rebirth and revival given to us in the form of the remixed version. The band was so happy with the remixed version of the album that they even included it in their collection, in their box set collection called Retrospective 3, 1989 through 2008, a box set of their studio albums through that time. And it was also made available as a standalone purchase, so if you weren't interested in buying the box set, you could still get the remixed Heaven Sent version of Vapor Trails for a pretty reasonable price. I think I paid about $11 US for it, so I'm not going to complain. Vapor Trails Remixed really is a triumph. The mixing and matching of the original multi-track recordings offered a grandiose playground for Bottrill to play in. So let's hear a smattering of track number 4, Peaceable Kingdom. Alex Lifeson holds down the rhythms fort while Geddy Lee hits the chords strong and slightly dissonant, and has a kind of flamenco flourish to the style of playing that he does on the bass throughout the song. There's multi-tracking on the guitars, there's multi-tracking on the bass. Neil Peart comes in through this in a sort of Keith Moon-esque quality, throwing in the occasional grace note here or there, and giving flourishes and touches in unexpected places. Vapor Trails, and therefore Vapor Trails Remixed, stands apart from the lion's share of their discography in a very sonically important way. It was their first release as a band since their 3rd album, Caress of Steel, not to feature any keyboards whatsoever. This was fairly important to Alex Lifeson. He felt that keyboards had always been, for the vast majority of their discography, too much of a factor, too much of an influence in the overall quality of the sound and production, and so he wanted Vapor Trails to be more tight. And originally, the original mix of Vapor Trails also had no solos, which was another first for Rush. So it's a pretty important album sonically, although the remix version, while it doesn't have any true solos, it does have sections where you can hear lead guitar parts come through. And these are all taken from the original master tapes, so it's really quite beautiful to listen to. Having no keyboards on the album meant that there would be a little bit more of a burden placed on Alex Lifeson to provide the texture and depth to the album rhythmically. And but the quaint truth is that it's really the power and dexterity shown by Geddy Lee that really stands out on the whole album of Vapor Trails. In the year 2000, Geddy Lee had released his album My Favorite Headache, which was his only solo album to date. And he had used multi-tracking on bass, and a lot of instances of the album where you think you're hearing a guitar part, it's actually just a bass guitar being played on some of the higher scales. Really, Geddy Lee reaches out phenomenally in Vapor Trails Remixed, and all of the quality of his tremendous skill, and he is probably the greatest living bass player for rock and roll music and for heavy metal music still to this day. Just such a unique style of playing. Again, it has flamenco style and chord style. He strums, he plucks, he does all these techniques, and they come through so beautifully. It's just marvelous. Closing track on the album, Out of the Cradle, serves a similar function to such other closing tracks as Everyday Glory from Counterparts, or Carve Away the Stone from Test for Echo, or Available Light from Presto. Each of these album closing tracks serves to give brightness and hope on the platter, instilling resolve in the good to be found in humankind. And here is an opening of the excerpt from Out of the Cradle. One thing I can safely say about both excerpts that I played for you is that they exude faith and justice and a foundation to build a better you or a better world around you. In 2001, 2002, before finalizing Vapor Trails, Rush had decided to keep the album to 10 or 11 songs, but ultimately they ended up using all 13 tracks they had produced, which is a gift to any Rush fan, really. I mean, it's hard to imagine listening to Vapor Trails and taking out any one of those songs from the album. It seems really impossible. There were 2 singles released from the album. They were One Little Victory was the first single, and later it was followed by Secret Touch. But singles could easily have been chosen from many of the songs on the album. Ghost Rider, The Stars Look Down, Earthshine, Freeze, which is part 4 of the Fear trilogy. All of these have a case that could be made for them. Ceiling Unlimited, all of them have a case that could be made for them sonically and lyrically as to why they could have been singles. There's just fantastic quality to be found within them. And for this reason, I'm giving Vapor Trails Remixed 5 out of 5 stars, and with a special asterisk next to it to point out that it is a remixed version of an original album. But even so, it just has so much quality, so much depth, texture, and overall richness of Rush. I mean, it's kind of like a complete package of everything that you love about Rush being put right there before you on one platter. So I highly recommend that you give it a listen if you haven't before. The sound quality is so much greater than the original mix. I loved the original mix. I bought Vapor Trails when it came out in 2002, and I loved it. I thought that it was a bit heavy, a bit muddy in the mixing and the production quality, but having read some of the literature around at the time, I understood that it was the nature of Geddy and Alex working in the studio that probably led to how it came out sounding that way. Now I find out that it also had, literal physical issues having to do with it, the burning of it to CD. But it is an intensely powerful album and really a great joy. It's one of the most uplifting and spiritually fulfilling albums that Rush has ever produced. And it certainly is worth a 5 out of 5 rating. So that's it for today. I thank you very much for spending some time with me. I'm glad that you chose to click on my video and give me a listen, share some time with me. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And also, please remember to consider checking out the Patreon page. Until next time, thank you very much for your time and attention. And peace, be well, and see you next time. Bye-bye.